Whatever is true. Not what feels true in a moment of emotion, not what sounds convincing in a season of confusion, but what remains true even when feelings fade, when voices contradict, and when circumstances shift. There is a kind of truth that does not bend with time. It does not change when it becomes inconvenient. It does not disappear when it is challenged. It stands quietly, firmly, even when everything else trembles. Fix your mind there, because what you allow to live in your thoughts will eventually shape your heart, and what shapes your heart will shape your life. Whatever is noble, not what the world calls impressive, not what draws attention, not what builds reputation, but what is honorable when no one is watching. What is gentle without weakness, what is strong without cruelty, what stands upright in a world that often bends. There is a quiet dignity in goodness. It does not announce itself. It does not demand recognition, but it leaves behind peace wherever it passes. Let your mind rest there. Whatever is right, not what benefits you at the expense of others, not what feels easy, not what is convenient, but what aligns with justice, what reflects integrity, what remains faithful even when compromise would be simpler. Rightness is not loud. It does not need applause, but it carries weight. It anchors you. It steadies you. It keeps your soul from drifting. Whatever is pure, not what looks clean on the outside while hiding decay within, but what is sincere, what is untainted, what is not mixed with deception. Purity is not fragile. It is powerful. It clears the mind. It softens the heart. It quiets the noise. And in a world that constantly pulls your attention in 1,000 directions, purity becomes a form of rest. Whatever is lovely, not what dazzles for a moment and disappears, but what gently stays. The kind of beauty that does not shout, the kind that heals. The kind that reminds you that goodness still exists. It might be found in kindness, in forgiveness, in small mercies, in moments of grace. Let your thoughts return there when the world feels heavy. Whatever is admirable, not what impresses, but what inspires, not what dominates, but what uplifts. There are lives that speak without sound. There are actions that teach without words. There are hearts that quietly change the atmosphere of every room they enter. Think on these things, not because darkness does not exist, but because you were never meant to live there. Your mind was not designed to be a battlefield. It was meant to be a sanctuary. If anything is excellent, if anything is praiseworthy, let it dwell within you, not as a passing thought, not as a distant idea, but as a home. Because your thoughts are not neutral. They either build you or they break you. What you replay will eventually become what you believe. What you believe will become how you live. And so you are invited. Not forced, not pressured, but invited to choose. Choose what you allow into your inner world. Choose what you nurture. Choose what you return to when your soul feels tired. You cannot control every voice around you, but you can choose which ones you carry within. You cannot silence every storm, but you can decide where your mind will stand. Let it stand in truth. Let it rest in what is noble. Let it remain in what is right. Let it be washed by what is pure. Let it be softened by what is lovely. Let it be lifted by what is admirable. Because peace does not begin in circumstances, it begins in the mind. And the mind, when anchored in what is good, becomes a place of refuge. So when the world feels loud, return to what is true. When the future feels uncertain, return to what is noble. When fear whispers, return to what is right. When your heart feels heavy, return to what is pure. When your soul feels tired, return to what is lovely. When hope feels distant, return to what is admirable. Think on these things, not once, not occasionally, but daily. Because this is how peace is cultivated. This is how strength is renewed. This is how the heart remains steady in a shaking world.